that what you did in Mexico was one step too far. That you're finished.
What do you think?
I think you're just getting started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are back. James Bond Club Ireland. JBCI Pod is back after a summer hiatus. And I think we all had busy summers. Before we get into all that, let's just, on the off chance that we have new listeners, because so many people have liked and subscribed and all that sort of stuff since we've been on a break, just want to say hello. I'm Paul Lally. I am the president of the James Bond Club Ireland, and this is my crew. I don't want to go left or right because I'm not sure if this is going to appear exactly as it is on the video as I'm seeing it. But Kev, will you introduce yourself and work around from there?
I would be delighted to introduce myself to our new listener. So, hi, listener. I'm Kev O'Callaghan. I run an account called Bond in Color. You might know it on the internet. Lifelong James Bond fan. Thunderball is the best Bond film in my view, and that's all you really need to know because the rest will all come out as you listen.
Can't find
Sean. I'll throw it to Sean. I'm going to throw the ball
Yeah.
around there. So, Sean, you go next there.
And hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Sean O'Hara. Hope you're all doing well. Again, lifelong Bond fan. Pierce Brosnan is the best Bond ever, and best Bond film is Tomorrow Never Dies. Thanks very much.
Hey, y'all started hijacking that. I didn't get a chance to throw in my
Too late. Too late.
Throw the ball, Sean.
Too late.
Where you go, Andy?
Right, I'm Andy. Another one of the team. Roger Moore is the best Bond, and Your Eyes Only is the Bond film. And if you are the new listener, why have you started now when there's so much good content you could listen to beforehand to catch up to reach now?
Go back, yes.
Brilliant.
And I'll throw
Just
the
for our,
ball
our
to
listener, if our new listener hasn't picked it up already, we are the carrot. Andy is the stick. But anyway, moving the ball on to Michael.
Indeed, I'm Michael. I am the guy who makes all these guys look good. I am the Chang, controlling all the dials in the background. David Niven's the best Bond, and James Bond 67, Casino Royale 67 is by far the greatest James Bond film ever made.
And the problem is we can't edit this out now because Chang here is in charge of the editing process, so that's built in. God
Indeed.
damn it.
But we will put up his address on screen right now if you're watching.
Send rotten fruit to him. All right, excellent. Look, this is great. We are delighted to be back. We're really, we missed it. We've got actually a lot, I think, sort of in the pipeline. But what we wanted to do for our first episode out of the bag is talk a little bit about the Daniel Craig era. Why are we doing this? Two reasons. One is sort of short-term and immediate. We have our 10th anniversary Spectre screening coming up this Saturday, which by the time this is out is tomorrow at 3 p.m. in UCD Cinema in Dublin. So wherever you are in the country or even outside the country, try your best, hightail it down to Dublin, and you can. It's going to be great fun. These screenings are always fun, and there is always libations and crack to be had afterwards. So let's do that. The second reason is a little bit more sort of long-term in the sense we have had now, is it 4 years? In 4 years next month or the month after, since the last James Bond film. And really, I think while we wait for Bond 26, it's kind of fairly typical that at the end of a Bond actor's tenure, people look back at them and sort of, they sort of look with a view, a little bit sort of skeptical, very tempted to sort of take it apart and critique it. And some of those criticisms that we've seen out online, maybe some, we're going to take a look, see if there's any veracity to them. But we're also going to take a look at what was really great about the Craig era and see where we feel about it and maybe have a little bit of back and forth on the way. So we have a minor sort of rough structure how we're going to do that. Kev, do you want to take us through what we're going to do to address that?
I will. And it's great that we're having a Craig discussion when I've mentioned Connery. We've got Brosnan fans, we've got Moore fans, we've got Niven fans. But Paul, We didn't get your favorite.
I mean, I'm a lifelong Bond fan, so I kind of love them all. But Craig is currently my favorite, has been for a long time. There's just something about Craig's directness. I know he's a very different type of Bond, but I just find his no nonsense, brutish approach. There's something quite compelling to watch about that. Yeah, but anyway, we'll get into all that.
We'll get into it, but that's what I wanted to kind of say, because we've got a nice balance of it there. But really, what we're going to talk, like we said, like you just said, we're going to get into the Daniel Craig era. We're going to go through all of his films and the reaction, the impact, our perceptions of those movies, the general audience perception of it as well, all the way from Casino to No Time to Die. We'll also bring into it, we'll blend in as we're going through the movies. We'll talk about, you know, what Craig brought to it, his impact. There was a physicality that you just said there, Paul, what he did to humanize the character a bit as well, and put a different spin on it. We'll talk about the box office, the skepticism that was there right from the go. Let's be honest, there was a lot of skepticism there, and then what comes next? What legacy does he leave behind for the future? So that sounds like a good plan, gents. Yeah.
Yes, let's do it.
It sounds like a great plan.
Let's
Where
go
should we
back to
start?
Casino Royale.
First
Casino
film?
Royale and the reset.
2006. Yeah. So I guess everybody knows the context right now. 2002 had seen Die Another Day, where they had dialed up the notch to 11, and people felt they had gone too techie, too outlandish, too this, too that, to the other. In the meantime, they had also acquired the rights to the novel Casino Royale, which eluded them for so long. There's a lengthy story about that. It's all out there if you want to find it. So the writers, Purvis and Wade, knew at the time that they were writing Casino Royale. And they also knew that because they were doing an origin story, about, which is important actually, because Casino Royale, the novel itself, is not necessarily an origin story. So it's kind of important to point that out, I think, right? It's fair to say he's already kind of set up as an agent in Casino Royale. So it's not like he becomes one. But we know that his background is to become a 00. He has to perform 2 kills and so forth. So this is pitched initially as an origin story. The writers don't know that who they're going to have. They know it won't be Pierce, so they're looking towards. I think Purvis and Wade said we were just envisaging an Ian Fleming type Bond when they wrote it. All they knew from the start was that they had parkour was going to be a set piece in it, and then that was all they did. Right. So along comes Daniel Craig. There's a year-long process, I think, from when he began talking to Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. He himself was skeptical about taking on the role. He didn't think he was wondering why he was a fit. He didn't fit the look, the whole lot. But they had talked about how compelling they'd found him on screen and on stage performances and so forth. So they had a little bit of a battle because they had to convince the studios. But they got him, and in, I think, October 2005, he was announced as Bond, with filming kicking off in early 2006, right? From there, we got the release of Casino Royale later on that year, and the rest is history. So why don't we talk... Oh, hello. So where do you guys feel what was your reaction when that came out? I presume you all went to see it.
If you don't mind, I might jump in and quickly say that I didn't really have a reaction to Craig because I was too young. For me, Craig was I always knew Daniel Craig as James Bond, whereas I reckon you guys, you probably had the reaction, you heard the vitriol towards his blonde hair and all that. But to me, Craig was always Bond. So I think it's kind of fascinating from my end of, I grew up and I had Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace on DVD. Me and my brother would watch the hell out of them when we were, I would have been about 7 or 8. He would have been about 9 or 10.
What age are you now? 13?
Yeah, 13, give or take a few. But we used to watch the hell out of them on like, we had a PS2 which could play DVDs, and it was delightful. But to be honest, like, that was before I got into Bond, if you know what I mean. So when I was a few years later, I started going down the kind of rabbit hole of Bond and stuff. But to me, Craig was always Bond. So
fascinating.
I never had I suppose, what we'll get with the next Bond of having a predetermined attitude to what he was like.
Amazing.
So and even when I see Craig to this day, I just think James Bond, or especially when I see the cover to say Casino Royale and him in the suit at the casino at the table, like, to me, that's just what I remember from childhood.
Yeah.
But I suppose, like, each of you have that as well. There's a time where none of us were reacting to George Lazenby being announced as Bond, as far as I know. But
I don't think so.
Andy,
I think it's really interesting to hear from your opinion. What did you think at the time? Because I didn't really have one.
Sean, what did you think at the time?
Yeah, I at the start, I was all gunning for a fifth Pierce Brosnan film. It was all signed, sealed, delivered as far as I was aware. But look, things happen, things change, and you know what? We were getting a new Bond. It was probably my second Bond as I got into Bond 3 Brosnan. So it was an interesting time. I didn't buy into all the blonde Bonds and all that. I was just excited for a new James Bond film. Knew it was going to be different because every actor has a different take on it. So really keen to see what Craig could bring to the role. I didn't know too much about Craig, to be honest with you.
Few people did.
I've seen him in different things before, but you know, it was sort of a surprise choice. But look, I was all in, happy enough. But on opening night, going to the cinema, I was blown away. Honest to say, I was blown away. I couldn't believe what they'd done. Obviously, I'd read the novel Casino Royale numerous times. How they freshened it up, how they introduced him as Bond. Obviously, the like the amount of like the he was human. They made him, they allowed him make mistakes. He was new. He was learning. He bled. You know, it was brutal. Oh, just blown away. And I think one of the biggest things watching the pre-title sequence and constraining that theme tune, we were at the races. Here we go. This is whoa. We are here, and I went and seen that film 5-6 times in the cinema. Loved it, and have watched the films again recently. And I think I put in the chat. I just sat like obviously Casino was the first one, and you just realize good a film it actually is. It's what they did was brilliant. It was brilliant. And you know what? They reintroduced Bond to a new audience, to the world, and Craig was the man. Oh, I have to say, out of the gate, blown away.
But can I just give a quick one on my take, and I give it to the other two guys? Then I'd been used to a few new Bonds because I started with Roger, so I'd seen Tim come and I'd seen Pierce come, and I was getting to the. I was assuming we were going for another kind of tall, dark, handsome type. People like Clive Owen at the time were named.
Yeah.
But while this was going on, I had actually seen Layer Cake. And there's a scene in Layer Cake where Craig plays this drug dealer, and he finds out that the guy he's kind of working for has been a police informant, and he goes home and he's stressed in his apartment, and he starts drinking whiskey, and he pours himself a whiskey, and he just takes the glass and he smashes it on the ground, and it's like it's visceral. You can feel like how edgy it is and how tense it is. It was just him in that scene, and I was like, geez, I remember thinking this guy's pretty cool. And then a few weeks later, I saw, people rumored to be Bond, and I saw this guy whose name I would never have known before, except I had just out of the blue rented that DVD. That's what we did back in the day, and he was up for it, and so I was like, oh, great. And I saw all the Craig not Bond stuff, but there was that famous pap shot with a pair of blue swim trunks, which sort of swung it back in the other direction. Then people were like, "Oh, who's this guy?" Well, it was filming at that point. But yeah, I was excited for Craig as Bond. I knew it was going to be good. What about you guys, Andy and Kev?
Andy, do you want to fire away there?
Well, I was when it was, yeah, I'll say when it was first announced, and the failed big reveal when he came down the Thames, I must admit I was very underwhelmed. But like Sean, from the very beginning of Casino Royale, I was thinking, wow, this is just something completely different. This is brilliant. The theme tune then kicks in, probably a very top tier theme tune. And the whole film itself was fantastic and blew me away. In fact, I read a quote recently about it saying that he was the Bond for the Jason Bourne, John Wick generation. Whereas, like, people are always saying, "Oh, Bond's got to have to up his game because of Jason Bourne, because of John Wick." Well, he blew them out of the water, didn't he, with that first film?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Kev.
But then
I was
stayed like that and carried on thinking he was amazing.
like Sean, I was waiting for a fifth Brosnan. Brosnan couldn't do no wrong. I enjoy Die Another Day, everybody else, but we'll have that TED talk another time. But
You're not the only one, Kev. You're not the only one.
we were all set for it, and I know Brosnan at the time. I think he knew a lot when he was talking about this, going for contract negotiations, and maybe we'll do Casino Royale and all of that. I think I knew Daniel Craig from the BBC series Our Friends in the North. I remember watching that way back in the early 90s, I think it was. And I kind of thought he didn't fit the look. And I think it's interesting what you're saying, Paul, about Clive Owen was kind of he probably fit the look at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what made this so noticeable, was it wasn't your typical looking Bond, but I don't know if there ever is. Could you say Roger Moore is a typical looking Bond? I don't know. I mean, he's a great looking guy. Pierce Brosnan, there you go, says Sean. So it was a bit of a surprise, and I was a bit skeptical, but go for it. Let's just see how it goes on. And I think what blew me away about when I went and watched the film was, first of all, there was no gun barrel at the very beginning, which irked me a little bit. What have you done to this? Has all this hype been for what? And then it starts, and it is a fast movie. I mean, it's the quote Timothy Dalton is bang bang bang. It is intense, and that opening titles and the song by Chris Cornell and the Daniel Klein. I loved the whole visuals that you had there. They're fast, it's moving, and it constantly goes. And I think it was the moment where you see Daniel Craig chasing after the bomb maker guy whose name I can't quite think of right now, but Parkour Chase.
Malacca, isn't it?
Malacca.
When you see him just run through
I nearly said Moloko, but that's a band.
Well, it's a band. But when you see him run through that wall, he doesn't hop through the wind. He goes through the wind, and Craig just goes through the wall. This is a whole different ball game here we're at. This is the Bond for the new century. And I mean, it's a great film. It's my favorite Craig. I'll say that. He brought so much to it. Everybody re-evaluated James Bond at that point, not thinking that it could ever be done differently. And wow, were we shown a spectacle.
And I might jump in for just 1 second, because I found this on my shelf, and I think it might be the DVD I used to watch Casino Royale on. It's the kind of
yes,
2008 3-disc deluxe edition of Casino Royale, which is what I would have watched it on. And I think it's also kind of low-key inspired my love for physical media, because it's a lovely digibook, 3-disc set, if it would want to come out. And it has some lovely artwork. You don't get this anymore unless you go looking for it. Sometimes you can get kind of cool steelbooks and stuff, but like, you get some lovely stuff. It's
brilliant,
it's
and
lovely.
also, I mean, not to be too pedantic about it, because streaming is really good, but you're also going to get slightly better quality experience, audio and visually, right?
Owning it, and but whilst the other thing I wanted to say was that as a 6-year-old watching Casino Royale, I think it's interesting what you said, what stood out to you. So it's the opening, it's the lack of a pre-title, it's the lack of a gun barrel and certain stuff. I didn't have any pre-notions of what a James Bond film was. So for me, the main memory I have of it is the parkour chase. And I think what's interesting about that scene is that kind of tonally and like the colors and it's visually, it's very different from the rest of the movie because it's bright. It's
Yes.
in Madagascar. You have
Yes.
the kind of sand colored. It's all very bright. It's in your face. It's very fast paced. And the rest of the movie has quite a dark kind of feeling to it, like the scenes in the casino, the scenes in Miami airport, the scenes towards the end when Bond's getting his willy whacked. So it's all
Not in a fun way.
not in a fun way, no. But to me, is that the parkour scene stood out,
Not
and
for
I
most
suppose,
people, anyway.
yeah, I think so. Oh, getting off track there, guys. But
I
it's
think
that,
Andy wants to digress. That's another podcast, Andy.
yeah.
But keep going.
But it was also the tone of the movie and the
Yeah.
dark kind of tone of it. Because the other Bond film I had seen to that point was Moonraker. And I only have kind of vague memories of it. But you could already tell, like, those were my first two Bonds. You couldn't get two more yin and yang.
Yeah.
But that's what I kind of my first impressions of that
Well,
as a
it's
6-year-old was.
those impressions are amazing because, like, first of all, for those of us who did have preconceived notions and knew what was thought we knew what was coming, I remember listening to radio and people talking about when they were first playing the Chris Cornell song. They were like, "Oh, I don't like this. This is not a Bondian song, right?" They were all pouring the negative. Like, Casino Royale really did have an uphill battle, right? It wasn't going, it wasn't super celebratory, as in, here comes a new Bond. It was like, well, there was a lot of people who loved Brosnan, and that was going away. So when it did come, and the fact that it had an uphill battle, it had to have that sort of magic bean element to it, where it's more than the sum of its parts. Because the thing you mentioned about the tone shifting, right? That's happened in other Bond films and other Craig films. And people will always cite like a shift in tone as a bad thing if they don't feel that they really like it. But whereas the shift in tone is a good thing if it comes off well, or if they feel they do like it. So, often the criticisms of these Bond films are kind of, they can be a little bit subjective in that regard, because I think you're right. Like, all the time, Bond is contriving, is shifting tone, is moving you along, taking you through these films really quickly. And this one just happened to do it with all the right elements to the right amount, and it lifted off the charts, both in the box office. At the time, I think it was over 500 million, which at that time was a lot. It was more than Die Another Day had made. And it was, I remember Peter Bradshaw in the Guardian giving it 4 or 5 stars, saying Craig was the best Bond since Connery. And I was like, wow, this was full on, But what would you say were the two main things about Craig that departed from the previous Bonds based on Casino Royale alone? Sean, you've alluded to it already. I think
definitely brutal. He was just the way he approached things. He was just like build a china shop sometimes and get the best outcome. Like as Kev was saying earlier on, like the parkour chase, like the Malacca is jumping through elegantly. Pierce is just steamrolling everything, jumping in the diggers, driving through buildings, busting through wall. That we were.
It's very agricultural, jumping into diggers.
Well, it was like a big freaking, I don't know what it was, a big digger.
It was great.
but it was going, whoa, this is different. This is something different here. And then it also brought and I think a big thing about the story was the love story between him and Vesper that Bond sort of fully embraced. And that was in the novel, sort of that was playing on that. But the way that was portrayed, you went along with it. And then obviously at the end with the big sort of betrayal, Craig was then burnt, and the way he portrayed that was excellent. I have to say, it was a breath of fresh air in terms of a different way of imagining the character. But I will give one quick shout out to Martin Campbell, who is the director, how he led that film as well. This was Craig's first film, brought Craig along. I have to give him a big shout out because this was the second Bond that he introduced, and he done 2 amazing films with it. So definitely the brutality and also the humanity, for want of a better word, in terms of the love story and how Craig portrayed that was brilliant.
Yeah. Others got thoughts on that?
Yeah, he brought forward that determination, that Bondian determination. I think we see this in the film. He is just straight line, doing what he has to do. I like also, I think, the humanity part of it. I think we see more to the character of Bond. I think that's the beginning of where he's less of this kind of guy who can walk in the door and it's all cool. But you know, there's a sense of humor in a lot of the scenes with Vesper. You know, kind of the, oh well, you know, I'm undercover and you're with Stephanie, was it Stephanie Rochester or something, and she's like, I am not. And you know, there's a little bit of play on what's come before. Again,
Yeah.
it keeps highlighting this is going to be different, folks.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's always interesting to me that only a few movies earlier you've Q telling Bond, never let him, you know, never let them see you bleed. And there
Mhm.
he is in this film in front of a mirror, you know, after a brutal fight on the stairwell, which again, you know, action, things you would have not seen for quite a while, I think, in a Bond film, a fight like that. And he's bleeding and kind of getting over it and the pain and the suffering and the torture, and yet he's still determined.
Yes.
And I think that was a whole new level, I think, for me
It's
anyway.
funny, isn't it? Because they turned a lot of stuff on its head. Like
They did.
we always like sneaky Bond, or you know, where he's kind of going undercover, or he's investigating the bad guy, and he's being a little bit circumspect or whatever. That's always fun to watch. But in this one, he's just like, no, I'm just going to sign my name, James Bond. Like he's just throwing all of these things to the wind, and yet it's kind of exciting. You know, it's ballsy, it's a bit rebellious, it's a bit like I play by my own rules, which is ironically very, very Bondian, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But also then his relationship with Vesper is much celebrated. Now, I always thought Brosnan was pretty good when he dealt with the relationships with women. I thought that was when his acting really seemed to take off. You know, I thought he was very good. You know, in The World Is Not Enough, for example, with Electra King, I thought that was really good. But what is different, I think, about Craig is that he seems to be building a relationship with this woman with a view to kind of the first thing that I remember, let's say, about Craig's Bond in Casino Royale is when he says, um, from what I understand, 00s have a very short life expectancy, so your mistake will be short lived. Like, that's kind of unusual. That's a little bit unusual. It's very fatalistic, kind of. It's like, I don't expect to last long in this, right? But then he develops this relationship, which might be his salvation. So the stakes are very high with the relationship with Craig's Bond, which maybe were not quite as high before, except, of course, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is no surprise, turns up as a recurring motif in the last Craig film. And I think that's the start of it. And that seemed to work really well. Audiences respond to that. It got their emotions going, which they didn't expect with James Bond films before. They expected, you know, a good romp and a ride through an adventure for a few hours. But this was like a more emotional thing, and they really responded. And I think they chased something like that ever since afterwards. And this is where the criticisms have come in, where they swung and they missed, they swung and they hit, and you know, so on and so forth. But would you agree with that? Would you say that was a very successful kind of thing? Ava Green was obviously superb. Their chemistry is incredible, and the whole thing, everyone just came out going, "This is triumphant. It's brilliant. I love it."
Yeah, and it's even the point of like the shower scene, you know, wherever Craig comes back after the plane. Like that's never been seen before in a Bond film, and the way he approached that. And I think it was Barbara Broccoli was saying like that's when they started to fall in love slightly. You know, Craig was coming.
Yeah.
He realized what trauma she's been through. He's never experienced this, whereas he just gets on with it. He just, as I said, he's a driving force, always going, and that's where his character slightly changed. That he needed to be appreciative of
Yeah.
the likes of Vesper, and that's where they start to fall in love. So that was all new in terms of we hadn't seen that before. So yeah, like,
And I just want to
going
call
ahead.
out this as an excellent example of, you know, a counterpoint to the criticism that is often levied at Craig, is that he had too much influence and he was too close to the producers, right? But that scene is a great example of where his input made the scene better, because in the original script, she was to appear in her underwear, and he was like, it's not going to work. If she's that upset and terrified, she's not going to be sitting there looking sexy in her underwear. She's going to be distraught and still in her clothes, kind of thing. And he went in with his clothes as well, and the whole thing just dials up the emotional level a little bit higher. And I thought that's an amazing instinct to have, and I think you know, we had a lot more of that, which was really, really good as well. I know people will push back with some examples, but I think that's a really a really powerful example of how we had someone who was really like, as for an actor to be that invested in the character that we love was amazing for me. I thought, you know.
I'll go one step a little bit more on this and might get a reaction. But I think the kind of him being too involved argument is a lazy argument, because of course he's going to be involved. This is a this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. He is the head of it. He's the face of it, and he is going to be involved. And he as an actor will want to be challenged as well in ways that that work best for him. I think you have to kind of respect that and give that creativity, and audiences will determine what they like.
Totally agree.
They're the ones who are going to determine how good or bad the next film is, and I think the audiences have been quite consistent throughout. I know I'm watching, and look, already we're looking at the time. We could turn this into a 5-part series, really, go through every movie.
We might have to. We might should do it as a 2-parter.
Maybe we should. Maybe we'll just do
thinking the same thing. Yeah,
because there's a lot to get through here. Rather than doing for us, so we just go as far as quantum and then see how we're going.
Let's do that.
Let's go for it. There you go.
Just like to go on top of what you just said. I think some people, because like I love the people with their strong opinions, and I love it when someone has an opinion that is really well thought out and strong, will actually change my opinion. That's happened in the past. But there are a lot of people then who just love to, just to complain and trash a Bond, not just because it's Craig. It could be any other Bond. And I'd really like, might be nice to just watch your unconscious bias sometimes, because sometimes the same people who have said, oh, Craig, he's too involved, he's too close to the producers, will also be the same voices who said, oh, I didn't like him in Spectre, he just dialed that performance in, It's like, you got to pick a lane here, and if you don't like the Craig films, that's super fine. It's a super, there's a great, do you know the Analyze This, Mr. Bond channel?
Yes.
Ryan out there, he made a great point about how there's kind of room for everyone in this, and you can be a fan of all of it or some of it, and it doesn't really matter, but that's those kind of things like, oh, I want more character in my Bond, but I don't like Madeline Swan or whatever, it's like, because she's not like, what about that character isn't good? I understand that you may not like the performance or the actress or whatever, but the effort and the effort that was put into these films to make them, to elevate them in terms of character and emotion is huge. That actually might be also their weakness, I think, as we go along, because I think some people don't necessarily want that from a Bond film. They just want a little bit of a lighter experience. But for better or worse, the Craig films decided to go full throttle on what they rightly viewed as their success with the first one. And yeah, I don't know. Andy, did you have any other thoughts on that, on whether they were following the Casino Royale mold through the whole lot, or what they were trying to chase in the rest of the films, or what did you feel was good or bad that followed on from that?
Well, like say, I thought a Casino was a brilliant, and it would have been a brilliant standalone film. I don't think it needed to have the continuation and the arc that went through them. The only other thing that I would, it's a very minor point, and I know that it's acting and whoever. I love Judi Dench. I love her as M, but I think if they were doing a reboot and giving him from the beginning, this is how he got his 00, I think they should have cast somebody else as M. I think the whole of the backroom team, for want of a better word, should have been recast as well.
Quite the purist, aren't you? How did you feel about the whole Diamonds Are Forever Blofeld relationship that just completely wiped out the relationship that had gone before it in Majesties, which in turn had wiped out the relationship that had gone before it in You Only Live Twice?
Yeah, well, you could say.
Does that ruffle your feathers as well, or did you just go, it's the 70s, who cares?
I was going to say I think it didn't really have the same impact when it was a standalone films.
Right.
I know that sounds a very flip and maybe glib response, but on a standalone film, it didn't really matter.
Okay.
Or it did, but it didn't.
Although
You know,
there was
it- and it-
continuation from Majesty's to Diamonds, at least through the opening sequence. You know, there was a kind of
Yeah,
revenge.
and I suppose that there's
however,
always little bits of continuity, like, you know, when he visits a grave.
yeah.
But I just,
But in this case,
But just
you wanted a completely new thing. Yeah. I mean, they did think
if you're
about
doing
that.
it,
But
if
they
you're,
just
re-
said
if you're
that she was
rebooting
such
it, reboot the whole thing.
yeah.
But she was brilliant in the role, which
Yeah.
I can
they were
understand
like,
why they kept, like Martin Campbell kept her, because she was really good in the role, and I can
Yeah.
understand that. But I just think to reboot it, start afresh.
But we did get. I mean, we're going to go through these films, but we did get a very strong relationship with them as they went through. I mean, you know, it's been pointed out as well that the relationship with M sort of mirrors Bond's relationship with, which I think is really good, because these two actors were so good they were able to do this. Fleming's Bond was always kind of charting Bond and Felix's journey in a kind of way that's sort of, I don't know if it mirrored or if it was aspirational towards like the UK's position in the world and how it and America were working together. And he was trying to sort of see what Britain was like in a post-imperial, post-war world, right? And so they had this kind of relationship the whole time. And now I think, you know, Bond was probably trying to find his position in a, you know, whatever it was, post 9/11 world, and the reaction, his relationship with Britain. And people have often written about how M in this case is a metaphor for Britain, and that she is kind of, she is pursuing, like her goals, and she'll do anything to get there. And he's like, he was hung out to dry in Skyfall, and he suffered and he got battered around as a result, and he's trying to find his purpose within that. Does that resonate with you at all or is it just, no, I enjoy watching them having the banter together? It's a little bit of a long-winded question. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
Who was that? No, I say I think that once she's there, and she's the connection between the two is excellent. And so I'm almost contradicting myself, but I think, and when they do get going, and especially the towards the end of Skyfall, I think it's just such a brilliant relationship that they have, and I don't think anybody else could have done that other than her. But then, if it had been a different one, maybe everything would have been. We never know, do we? Things could have gone down a whole different path. You know, even to the little subtle nod where they're in the Aston, and he's looking to flick the ejector seat when she's going on at him. You know, little things like that. And I don't think it would have worked with somebody else.
You're a mute, Paul.
What about the dynamic when you get into Quantum? Let's kind of start easing into Quantum a bit there. I mean, the way she's in that movie and that relationship gets extended a bit more. How would you think that would have worked with a different actor, or would it?
Well, that's like we will never know, will we? Because
True.
one, we don't know who was going to be cast. Two, we don't know if it was a man or a woman. We don't know whether it was going to be a cantankerous old boy or whether it was going to be a new, forward-thinking, upwardly mobile go-getter. You never know, because it never happened. So we can't give an answer to that question.
But they build on the relationship, like they went with Judi Dench, but they build on that relationship in Quantum. It's like Bond, like M is almost assassinated, they're sort of taken out. Bond is at her apartment, or sorry, at what do you call your man? Mitchell's apartment. Like M is saying, "Oh, I found the Christmas presents I give him." She's starting to question Bond, like, who are these people? That she's near relying on Bond, whereas the first one she was ready to feed him to the dog, so to speak. Whereas now she believes in Bond, and Bond, like even later on in the film, the CAA are coming in to capture Bond. She lets him go, lets him escape, and then she's actually supporting him, telling Danner, he's my man, you know, like, so that completely changes that she's bought into what Bond's mentality, what he's thinking. So that relationship is always building, which started in Casino in probably rougher waters, but they build on it very well in Quantum. That plants the seeds for the story in Skyfall.
And I think what Andy brings up as well, other than just the fact that they kept, say, Judy as the same actor, is the whole notion of Quantum being a direct follow up to Casino Royale in the literal sense of you can go from one movie into the other and only a few minutes have gone by, which you
Yes.
never really got in any other previous Bonds. Obviously, in some there were maybe more direct continuations than others, but you got the sense that time had passed and they're onto a new story, whereas this is a direct continuation.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because you do often hear people on different sides of the divide of, for some people, they like the continued story. And for some people, Bond should always be individual missions with new villains every time, unrelated, or if they are related, kind of distantly.
Mhm.
So, but I think one of the things that in recent years I've really come to appreciate about Quantum of Solace is the direct tie-in from Casino Royale, because like Quantum of Solace is one of those movies that it was at the time I don't remember what the reaction was like, but in later years I can discern that it was very kind of mixed slash wasn't good as Casino. And you come from a high that is Casino back down to something like a Quantum, which has its flaws. But I think in recent years, a lot of people have gone back and maybe it's had a new bit of appreciation to it, which I think is great. But it's also with Casino that like the character is continuing on the themes from the previous movie. And it's hard to say that with other Bond movies
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the idea is what's Bond's new mission? Who's going to be the new villain?
Yeah.
Who's going to be what's going to be, I suppose all these maybe kind of slightly more superficial things of like, again, what's maybe the new song and stuff and all that, they're the big selling points. Whereas what I like about Quantum is almost, okay, how has Bond going from Casino into Quantum, how is his character arc going to change? Do you get me? I think that's something I found really fascinating going back and watching it in recent years.
I think what was great about Quantum was, like you said, they continued the theme and they continued Craig as Bond, really brutal, really bent on revenge, really determined. He was very consistent in that and went from that, the betrayal and the loss of Casino Royale into a blistering rage into Quantum. So what was he going to tackle with that blistering rage? Was it going to be the revenge for the people who killed Vesper or who forced her to kill herself, or was he going to investigate the whole quantum thing? Was he going to try and be a hero for the people who you see in South America who are suffering from the water shortages? A lot's happening, and it's not necessarily tied together in a way that builds your kind of expectation or your emotions towards a climax. I think that's the problem with the writing. I do not understand how writing works for films. I don't know how you build a script like that, but I know that a lot of people just kind of felt watching it kind of going a little bit confused or a little bit sort of up and downy about Quantum in a way that Casino didn't. It just took them from beginning to end right up there, because
to be fair, it was affected by the writer's strike, wasn't it?
It was
still writing, putting drafts of the script together on the day of filming it.
Yes.
So it was a bit of a hot mess if you look at it like that.
Yes. And Mark Forster and Daniel Craig ended up doing some of the writing. And as they will admit, well, certainly Craig admitted that he's not a writer. So I think they did with what they had. They did a lot, and what I liked was I liked the relationship with Camille, because it's kind of they both have something going on. They're both seeking revenge, and they both have this kind of background of loss. She lost her family, and he lost the woman he loved, and at the end they're both very, very close. It's that scene where they're about, like, they've come so far and they think they're going to die in the fire, and they're both willing to just go, okay, we'll just cut it here without any pain. That's like again, huge amount at stake emotionally in the Craig films. But from plot standpoints, it's a little bit wobbly, and it's a pity because Matthew Almeric is a great actor as well. But I don't know if he had the force that Le Chiffre had, or if he had the impact. So it's a bit of a wobble, but I think people like it because it feels like there's lots of action in it. Craig is brutal, and it's also a very stylish film. He looks cool in it.
No, he does.
Yeah.
He does, and there were also, like, I've heard Craig say before, it was the second album syndrome slightly. Like, how are we going to do this? And then obviously, as Andy was saying, they were very much struggling with the writers' strike, and they started filming without a completed script, so they were always playing catch up. And listen, the Being James Bond documentary, like Michael G. Wilson said, we just didn't get Bond's journey right. But I have to say, I have some issues with Quantum, to be honest with you, but the way Bond starts that film to the Bond that finishes that film, like, that is some arc in itself.
Yeah.
Like, that last scene is an amazing scene. Like, it's pure Bond. It's probably one of Craig's best scenes for me in a James Bond film.
Really?
Yeah, just the way he portrays it, like, it's just pure. I just see an assassin. That man is there, but he gets the information he wants, and he gets a redemption for Vesper, for him. Because I always think it sticks out for me. Like, near the end, Camille says, like, "Will you be able to?" Like, I think it's like there's a thing to where they're going. Mathis is giving him tablets to help him sleep, and Craig's at the bar drinking on the plane. Later on, Camille saying, like, "Will you be able to sleep again? Can you forgive?" Forgive is a big thing. Craig gets redemption in terms of Bond gets redemption at the end of that film. I think that arc is excellent in the film. Like, I say I have issues with it, but the way he comes, the journey he's on, I actually think it's done very well.
Great.
I think they were
Still have issues, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm like that as well. So there's highs and lows with it. I think they were doomed, to be honest, after Casino Royale. And
Yeah.
the difficult second album was definitely going to be the curse around this, because the expectations. When you think about Casino Week, we had this low expectation, a lot of this negativity, the blonde Bond and all that, and then slowly the photos come out, the trailers come out, and it surprised everybody, I think. So the expectations were so high across the board, I think, when it came to Quantum, that they ironically, and I know people have complained about these films being a bit too long, years between them and all of that. I think they went a bit too soon. And they, even if it was another 6 months or a year after that, they might have had it just a little bit more refined. And when they went into it, like, I adore the beginning of it. I love the fact that it is fast and I can't figure out what the hell is going on, because I imagine a car chase is probably going to be like that in real life. Who's coming where? What's is your man in the boot bumping around there or what? But
the difference is, in a real car chase, I wouldn't be looking. The way Craig just looks. He doesn't even have emotion. I'd be like,
yeah, the
do you know
doors
that
come
scene?
off.
Exactly. Do you know that scene in GoldenEye where he's preparing the bomb and a bullet goes off beside him and he just moves like that? He doesn't even really react. And it's very cool. I think this is a bit like that. Craig's like that. I mean, he does grimace a bit, but he's so focused. Like, doesn't matter if the door comes off, doesn't matter if the car falls apart. He's going for it, and that's a very exciting sequence. I completely agree.
It is. And they've taken his determination from the first film and they've, like you say, amplified it. They've taken the speed of the first film and they've amplified it. But the problem is that they get so far into it just after the titles and they go, oh, we're exhausted from amplifying things up here. What will I do? We'll tone it down. Let's get a bit cool. Let's go on a bit of a mission and stuff. I love the opera scenes as well in it. I think it is a style. It's Bondian. He's there. He's tuning into to the crowd. The way he interjects. Can I offer you some advice? that for me is like, "Ugh, this is exactly what it is for." And then it meanders then a little bit, which
Yeah.
is a shame because it's a shorter runtime as well.
Yeah.
It has a lot of will I watch it? Of course I'll watch it. I'll still enjoy
Yeah.
it. There's a lot to enjoy in there. I have to give lots of love for the guy who's sweeping there on the is it in Haiti on the pier
He's
or
become
wherever
very
it was.
famous, that guy.
He's a great guy sweeping away there without touching the ground. I love these little things. So there's a lot to say for it. And the character again, there's a completion to it definitely at the end of it.
Yeah.
That arc and that kind of, no, I'm at what we thought was, I'm at peace with this and we'll move on then. Is a nice touch to it after it. But yeah, if they waited a bit longer, maybe we could have had something even more special.
There are a couple of
think
things that. Sorry,
Oh,
go,
no.
Michael.
I was going to say, I think with Quantum, it's almost a case of like the actual fundamental bits of the movie are its weaknesses. So the writing, the editing, the direction, they're the stuff people usually point to in Quantum that are kind of the foundationally poor elements of it. But what I think, what I kind of love about Quantum is that it's maybe the more subtle bits of the movie that I love. It is Craig's character. It's the relationships in the movie. It's all that sort of kind of just tonal, thematic atmosphere it has, which I love. In comparison to the plot's not as great as other plots. The villain isn't as great, even though Matthew Almer, he's a great actor, wasn't given the greatest material. The henchmen aren't as good. The set pieces aren't as memorable for certain cases. But like, it's the smaller bits, it's the character moments for Craig, which are the things that stand out for me. As kind of the real strengths of Quantum, which I always like. And I think it's another one that when you watch Casino Royale, I always try to go out of my way to watch Quantum straight afterwards. Because it serves kind of in two ways. It's good and it's bad, because you go from one movie, which I think is almost perfectly constructed in terms of all of its elements are all there, to another movie which is a bit more mishmash, not as smooth, not as, I suppose, not as well made. But I think the journey you go on from the start of Casino Royale to, I suppose, he's Quantum of Solace, him finding that solace and kind of becoming like the agent who we see at the start of Skyfall. I think that's massively like rewarding as a complete watch. And another, like, the other thing which I found kind of, I say it's not really about Quantum, but it's that kind of thing of, the one thing that's mainly bothered me in the Craig movies is that you go from Quantum, which is a movie about Bond. He's kind of just coming to terms with the agent he is. He's gone through his first big arc. If this was a comic book, this would be the first arc of the run, Then we get to Skyfall, and it feels like we've missed the entire middle section. Because then they go to, for what Bond, he's a bit past it. Look how old he is, look how haggard he is. And it's been 4 years, and you're like, lads, I wish we got about 3 movies in that space of time where we get peak Craig of, this guy is the most badass agent in the world. He is in his peak, which you could say all the other actors get. All the other movies in the franchise, you're supposed to believe that Bond is at his peak. This is, especially in like Thunderball, which Kevin will completely, hopefully agree with. That is Bond at his absolute peak. If he's a football player, he's getting the Ballon d'Or. Like, that is peak. Whereas he goes from Quantum of Solace, where he's
The
he's
Thunder
just
Ballon d'Or.
Sorry.
Oh, just I was thinking Bondalore, but I was going on again. It's all going wrong. You and I were thinking the same thing. Sorry, Michael.
But you go from Quantum, where he's almost a guy who has just cemented his place on the first
We're
team.
dads. What can you help? It's dad's joke have to be asserted.
Yeah, that's fine. But you go from Quantum, where it's like he's almost asserted his place on the first team, to Skyfall, where he's now one of the veterans.
Yeah.
And like, we didn't get him in his absolute prime, which is something that, looking back, kind of annoys me.
Valid
And what
point.
Yeah.
do you guys all think of that? If you want to kind of wrap up the Quantum talk.
Well, it's kind of like people complaining that there's we don't want the continuity, and then there is continuity, but there's a gap, and they're complaining that there's a gap. So it's kind of both things. It's like these stories aren't written in stone. But doesn't have to be chronology to them. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to, there's nothing written in stone. You can do what you like with these stories. And that's what Sam Mendes did. He said, I want him to be, a bit, not over the hill, but like the veteran who's experienced so much that now the weight of that experience is bearing down on him. And that's going to be a good story. But they worked so hard at the start this is the new guy, it would have been nice to see a little bit more squeeze, a little bit more juice come out of that squeeze before they changed it. I do agree with you on that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm the same. I feel like regardless of continuity, you finish Quantum, and he's the man now. I suppose we kind of assume he's Bond. He's got over this hurdle. I never left, ready to go for the next mission. And then you kick off the next mission, and it's kind of, well, you didn't have to come back. What are you doing here for? And I do feel there's a missing film in there. There's a story that someone might fill in the gaps in there, but there's definitely something missing in that, which is it is a tale of two halves. I think if you look at the Craig era overall, you've got those two at the beginning, and you got the other three then kind of coming up along the way, and Skyfall kind of almost balancing the two either side. So yeah, there's something missing there.
Story is called 007 Bloodstone, and it's available on the PS3. All good retailer.
I agree. I agree as well in terms of. I have to say, I know we'll chat more about Skyfall, but Skyfall, another excellent film. It just sits off to the side slightly. Quantum, as what Kev's already said, Casino and Quantum are the two films, and then we have this break. Watching the end of Quantum, we have James Bond. James Bond is in place. Here we go. And then, as I say, they take their time. They have a good story. They get like an amazing director in. They were looking to get the family back together. We have Moneypenny, Q, all that there. But the story just doesn't fit in the way the Craig films were going. But as Paul said, look, different people come in, they change things up. They want to write things differently. If there was another film, if there was one more, probably make him more rounded as the Bond character, Skyfall would just have happened and would all have been grand. But yeah, I agree. There is a missing step there. However, would we have got the film Skyfall? So they have to weigh it up with that element of would we have got Skyfall? And then, but Craig was a big advocate to get Mendes in. And I know that Michael and Barbara, they wanted to get the family element back, get Bond back to a family, making James Bond who he is, but they twisted it in a certain way. So,
they changed it a lot.
Upset about it.
They changed the dynamic of with the new guys coming in, because I may be reading this entirely wrongly, but I viewed when I watched Sean Connery and Lois Maxwell play Bond and Moneypenny, they seemed like maybe they had joined the service at the same time, roughly. They seemed like, when you have a wave of staff that come in to work and you're kind of all peers, you might go for a beer together. They seem of that kind of, within a few years of each other, we came in and blah, blah, blah. Whereas now you have Daniel Craig, already the grizzled veteran, and Naomi Harris plays Eve Moneypenny coming in. She's a field agent. Or she wants to become a field agent, and he's kind of advising her against it. So he's kind of imparting his and he's kind of imparting his experience and wisdom and showing that like it's taken his toll on him and he's kind of warning her about it, thereby placing them at a more senior, more junior kind of level straight away. So that dynamic changes, and that there is flirting between them still, which is really fun to watch. I think they're really spectacular together as well, but it's a different thing, you know. We're already delving into the rabbit hole of the next 3 Bond films, which we said
You're
we were
sky
going to
falling, Paul. You're sky
I'm s-
falling.
Oh,
falling.
My
This is the
suggestion was
end.
you're going to
This
you're
is the
getting
end.
you were getting thrown down the elevator on Stromberg's ship
Yeah.
into
I was.
the
I had
waiting
voluntarily jumped into the
door,
piranha
yeah.
tank of the more controversial Craig films.
Yes.
Yeah, look, let's. I don't know what we had in our mind that we were going to get all Craig's tenure done in 1 hour. We've gone over an hour. So, look, if you enjoyed this, you know, we're going to do it again. Let us know in the comments. We'll do the second part in 2 weeks. If you didn't enjoy it, we're going to do it anyway. So tough luck.
Yeah, don't listen.
Don't listen. Yeah, just go and do something else. Anyway, we've had a great time chatting about this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much for tuning in again, and we'll see you soon. For those going to Spectre on tomorrow, enjoy.
Saturday.
I, alas, will not be there because I am currently a Swiss resident. Actually, one thing on Quantum, Anatole Taubman, who plays Elvis, is a huge actor over here, big stage actor. So I have to get myself to see one of his plays whenever he's in one.
Get him on the pod.
Yes.
Isn't it right, Paul, that a friend of your is it some friend that was in the opera scene or something? Or?
Yes, the Mr. White's girlfriend, who has nothing to say but does give a nod. She is a South American actress resident here in Switzerland. We got a video from her. I am apparently it's my mother-in-law has the connection because she's a Spanish speaker and they have these Spanish connections. And she said, "Yeah, come on, I'll get you to meet her." I was like, "Yes, thanks." So watch out for that. We'll have her on the pod as well. But in the meantime, all have a wonderful weekend. I'm representing from afar, the Spectre, but I'll be thinking of you all. And can't wait to see how it goes. All right. Take it easy, everyone. Over and out. Till the next time.
Good luck.
See you soon, guys.
Good luck.
Bye.